Thank you for joining and welcome to LeadDev Bookmarked. LeadDev is a global community of engineering leaders who come together to discuss all things leadership, teams, tools, and tech. Bookmarked is our monthly book club that takes place on the first Tuesday of every month. Our sessions cover an array of engineering and leadership books that our awesome LeadDev audience can draw insights and practical experiences from. I'm Suzan Bond. I'm your moderator. I'm a former COO of a scaling startup and a leadership consultant and leadership coach. My specialty is tech leaders. You can find me everywhere at Suzan Bond, SUZANBOND. Today, we're going to be talking about the Software Craftsman. If you have questions for Sandro, please pop them in the Q&A feature on Zoom. And Sandro, if you can just give a tiny bit of a background, like introduce yourself for the people who maybe don't know you. I've been familiar with you for many years. I was very excited to have you. We have a lot of friends in common, but can you just give a quick introduction of yourself?
Sure. So I am a software developer. I started my career as a software developer in Brazil. So the first years of my career were in Brazil. I moved to the UK in 2004. And then I was involved with the early agile software projects, if you like. I got the whole agile history, agile transformations, always mostly as a consultant and for large organizations. Had the opportunity to apply that at a very large scale and got involved with software craftsmanship the very beginning. And then I started my own consulting company that is based on the software craftsmanship values and wrote this book that we're talking about today.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So why did you write the book? What was the impetus for writing this book?
So this is an interesting question because I always wanted to write a book. I was already writing blogs. I used to write a lot of blogs before. I was already giving talks in conferences, so I was already publishing some materials here and there. But what I was missing is something where I could go a little bit deeper in something. And there were loads of things that I liked. So I still have a few books inside of me. But I was thinking something far more technical because that's kind of my background. But then there was a combination of two things. One was the software craftsmanship was emerging as a movement, and I was at the heart of it from the beginning. And we didn't have a literature. So the combination of software craftsmanship being in my mind all the time, because I had started a community in London, I was talking about that all the time. So it was a strong passion, alongside the lack of formal literature in the software craftsmanship space. So then I just combined them both. But I wrote the way I wanted to write. I didn't write, though. I was not thinking really in who would read the book. I really wanted just to get the stuff that I had in my head, even if it was just for myself. It was more like a realization, a personal achievement than actually, I want to write a book that's going to be read by many people. No.
That's great, right? To get something out of your head is a really big reason why people write. Help me get this thing out of my head, codify it, because when we write, there's something about that, right? I don't know. I write to understand myself.
To structure your thoughts, because when you are writing your thoughts down, you are forced to structure them. You are forced to create a cohesive sequence or structure that, because in our heads, for example, quite often, there are things that are very clear to us until someone asks you to explain to them. And then we start going all over the place to explain something that in your head is very simple. So writing it down allows you to structure your thoughts.
It's so great. And there's applications probably because, software engineers need to write documentation and different things. So there's some really great tips and application in there.
We work with the structures all the time, right?
Yeah, I love that. Well, what challenges did you experience in getting this book published?
So I started because I was not thinking about who would read the book. I didn't have any commercial focus on anything like that. I didn't have any ambition in terms of how popular the book will be or whatever. I wanted to one day hold my own book and say, that was written by me. I was the only reader, but it is mine, right? That kind of thing.
I get that.
Yeah, so my mom and dad kind of read the first pages. But so I started on LeanPub, and then I went ahead on LeanPub, and then until some people said, you know what, like you should publish that properly, because LeanPub is great to get some feedback or even like to get stuff out, but then some people said, look, you know what, I think you should do that properly. And I remember that, but then how do you go from there, right? So you have like a bunch of pages and so then I don't think I ever told this story in public. So yeah, first
First
time.
time.
So I was invited to give a talk on software craftsmanship in Chicago. There was a software craftsmanship North America conference, and there I gave my talk, and there were a lot of very famous people in the agile craftsmanship world, and I had the pleasure to meet Dave Thomas from the Pragmatic bookshelf. They wrote the Pragmatic Programmers
Yeah.
book, a Pragmatic Programmer book, and then they have the Pragmatic bookshelf. So I had a chat with him, and he liked my presentation, and I told him that I was writing a book, and he asked me to send him the draft. And at that point, I had almost the entire book written. So I sent him the book, and then not his team there, someone from his team, they read the book, the draft, and they came back to me. Oh, and then at that time, my business partner, Mesh, because I came back to London and said, hey, I met Dave Thomas, I met the guys from the Pragmatic Bookshelf, they are interested in the book. And then he said to me, I like them as a publisher, like they have a lot of good stuff, but your book is not for that publisher. And I was a bit upset with that comment.
Like,
Oh, this is kind of my partner, my friend, you know, like I was excited about it and he was not. And he said, no, your book is not for that thing. So then when the feedback came back from there, they said to me, my book is divided in two halves. There is the first one that is more like historical mindset, and the second one is a bit more practical. Let's say you could try to apply some of those things in companies. So they said, I want you to dump the first half and just evolve the second half that is more practical. And I was very disappointed because for me, the first half is the most important, is the mindset. The thing that I wanted you to drive home was, how do I see the world? How do you actually apply? That will take different shapes according to the different companies' environments. But the type of book from the pragmatic bookshelf, they are very, do this, buy this, do this, this is the problem, this is how you solve it and stuff. And I didn't want, and then I end up saying no. But then I was disheartened because I had met people that I love. For example, the Pragmatic Programmer is a book that I really like, and then I was sad because I didn't have any other offer. And then I met another guy in Germany that published a book from the Prentice Hall in the Kent Beck series. And then he said, then I told him this story, and he said, look, you should have spoken to me. I'm going to introduce you to the guys in Boston from the Prentice Hall. So long short, I was introduced to them. I sent them the draft. They read the draft and was like, we love it. We want to publish as is. And I could choose if it would go under the Uncle Bob or the Bob Martin series or the Kent Beck series. I ended up choosing Bob because we were closer. But this, and then that's how my book was published there. And then what we were discussing later on, that's what Mesh told me. So look, what I meant was, when you look at the classical books in our industry, the ones that stand, like people still read after 20 years, they come from that publisher, not from the other publisher. And so I think that because of that, my book was published in the right publisher, because it's a book that can, even after a few years, it won't get old as fast as many other IT books or technical books. So
yes.
Yeah,
it sounds like, sorry to interrupt you, it sounds like that first part is sort of evergreen. That philosophical history is really evergreen, that people can use always. Exactly. Well, and on that note, I would love to talk about, so you define software craftsmanship as a movement and a mindset. Can you describe what you mean in the difference between those?
Yeah, so the movement has a historical connotation, right? So if we go back, because I need to tell a little bit of history in order to get to the book and software craftsmanship, because software craftsmanship was not something that just emerged. There was a reason, a trigger for
Right.
it. And so in the 90s, when I joined the industry, we were coming from what many called the waterfall ways of doing software. So very bureaucratic, very full of, how can I say, processes and stuff. So to get one thing done took a long time and loads of silos and people not collaborating and stuff. So then in 2001, a group of people got together. So there was two people, Uncle Bob and Martin Fowler. They wanted to do a gathering of like-minded people. They joined their lists. And that's what became the Agile Summit in the Snowbird in 2001, in February 2001. And that gathering brought 17 people that they were representatives of many different agile methodologies. Back then, we didn't call them agile methodologies; they were just methodologies like extreme programming, Crystal, Scrum, and many other things. So those guys got together, and then in that summit, they found what was common across their methodologies and how they would like to change software development as a whole. And that led to the whole agile movement. That's when I get into the context, because as I was already following that from Brazil, from a distance, but I moved to the UK 2004, where everything was happening. So because agile took the world by storm, most of the large companies were adopting those agile. They had these agile transformations, and everyone wanted to transform and be faster, and so it was agile transformations everywhere, almost like we see digital transformations nowadays. But back then it was agile transformations everywhere. And I was lucky to be part of it. So the difference from the US and London is that in London, first of all, we had a much smaller country. And a lot of those large organizations investing on new techniques, they are pretty much concentrated in London. So the fact of being in London gave me and others that were here the opportunity to see the evolutions of the methodologies all concentrated in a single city. And we had tons of agile transformations going on in very complicated environments. So, and I was here working with those people, so I met a lot of those people. We had very vibrant communities. And then what happened was people like myself that were very technical, we were very excited with Agile, but after a few years, we were also a bit disappointed. And that happened to developers and to certain companies. So around 2006, 7, close to 8, people start rejecting Agile because they said, look, we are changing everything, all the processes. So people are collaborating better. But the engineering side, the software development side didn't come along. So we had different ways of collaborating, but the technical practices to give the agility in the software, and the software agility is what gives the business agility. Right? The business will move just as fast as we can change the software. If it takes forever to change the software, the business cannot move. And that's exactly what was happening. So a lot of changes in processes, but very few changes in technology. So that led certain companies to start saying Agile doesn't work. And developers say, look, this is not what we wanted at the beginning. We wanted the technical agility and the proximity with the business, and that didn't happen. So the reason I'm telling this story is because around 2008, there was a dissatisfaction from part of the Agile, the more technical side of the Agile community, and some of their creators, like Uncle Bob, for example. So then they met in Chicago in 2008 to say, look, this is not what we wanted. And they started to review, okay, but how can we fix this? So then they started talking about software craftsmanship. So the software craftsmanship manifesto is almost like a provocation. It comes on top of the Agile manifesto, almost as a continuation. So when software craftsmanship came about, it was almost like almost like a reaction to bad Agile. It was almost a provocation. If Agile had been implemented like from both sides, process and technology, we probably would not be talking about craftsmanship. But there was this friction between the more technical side of Agile and the more process side of Agile. Then, so the reason that this is important is because as a movement, so going back to the question, the movement, what I qualify movement is a group of people with common interests that get together and exchange ideas, but in a more structured way. So they create their own communities, they have conferences and things like that. So for me, this is a movement. It's a group of people that are working under the same ideas and consciously making an effort to share ideas. So that's why the craftsmanship started as a movement. I started the first community in Europe that became the largest in the world and all that kind of stuff. But then there is the mindset, because although there is a group of people that are trying to change something,
Yep.
they also need to know, but what are we changing? What is the guides? So it's not only technical practices, it's not only what we'll do, but it's like what we want to achieve with that. And that's where the mindset comes in. So the movement for me is communities, conferences, literature, and sharing knowledge. The mindset is what drives individually each one. It's like me as an individual, because you don't need to be part of a group to share the same values. And some people don't want the label. Some people don't want to be part of they don't want a label, say I'm a software cross person or whatever else, or I'm in this community or that community. But they share the same mindset. And the mindset in software craftsmanship was professionalism. We wanted our industry to be better, and how to find ways to always do things in a better way. And that's the craftsmanship mindset.
I love it. And it's great history. Well, and you wrote the book from an employee perspective, but now you're a business owner. So I'm curious, if you updated the book from that perspective, what would you add, change? How might you adapt it?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about the past 10 years. And this is certainly a factor, because like when I wrote the book, I was the book was published. I already had Codurance, but like the draft was written before, and Codurance was a small company anyway back then. So I wrote from a developer's perspective, like me as a software developer or a software engineer. How do I see my profession? How I would like our industry to be? What is my view as an individual of professionalism? So the book is very based on that perspective. Like there was a lot of technical practices, individual behavior and stuff. And even like, for example, I believe that now that I'm trying to do a self-critic, is that the word? Like auto-critic? So like look back at my work and it's like, there were a few perspectives missing. It's not that I changed my mind, because I haven't.
Right.
So when I look at from the lenses that I used at that time, I still have the same perspective. What was missing is other perspectives. So for example, one thing that now, being a company owner, being an employer, having clients, having to pay salaries, having to make sure that everything works, that we are delivering a service with quality, but we still can pay salaries and attract talent and provide a career progression. All of that needs to be balanced. You start understanding that software development is not just the writing of the software. It's about processes, it's about collaboration, it's about managing expectations, it's about leadership, it's about like being very good at managing your tasks and controlling the process. And so there are so many other perspectives. So for example, are we solving the right problem? Right. So because like before we was that is like, are we doing the right thing, but are we doing the thing right? So the craftsmanship was always like, are we doing the thing right? But doing the right thing is also, you cannot do something right, but if that thing is the wrong thing,
right, then a beautiful thing, but it doesn't solve the problem.
Exactly. And that was exactly where agile was. They were trying to do the right thing, but in the wrong way. So now, after you have more perspectives, you don't fight other things. You start incorporating them. So, for example, you see that agile, craftsmanship, lean, DevOps, and all of those other movements, they are all part of the same, because you need to have a more holistic view of a software product. This is it's not even a software project anymore. It's a software product. We are creating products, and for that you need user experience, think about your user, the journey. Would we impact the market share, competitors? So all of a sudden, building a software becomes far wider than just looking at the code itself, which makes the software professional, that forces a good software professional to be also to open up their skills, to have a much wider view of the world. So that's probably what I would change. I think that if I went back, I would emphasize that software development is a much wider thing, way beyond code. I think that's what I would do.
I love that. I mean, of course, I come from the leadership and organizational side of the house. So I love that and really think that when you combine really great code that solves a problem and people who know how to navigate an organization and humans, there's something really powerful that can be created from there.
And there was one bad side effect, of course, that like every time that you have a movement, that's why I like the ideology, because ideology can be individual and then you can drive your life according to whatever values and principles that you choose for yourself. But like every time you have movements, normally I like them a lot. They drive the industry, they have the right critical mass to make a change, but they create some side effects as well. So as soon as people go to the extremes, then you have issues. So for example, in software development, some developers in the craftsmanship world, they end up becoming prima donnas. They say, "Well, now I am the professional, I'm the best developer in the world. My client needs to wait for me to finish my software, my well-crafted software." But they forget that there is a business that needs to move. And those are the things that I would do a better effort to address before they happen.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and the book is almost 10 years old. Congratulations on your anniversary coming up. How do you see these ideas evolving from, not that you changed your mind. I know you said you didn't change your mind, but has there been any evolution of what you've seen since then?
Yeah, so I think that we were in a very good trajectory before the pandemic, because like most of the communities were at full speed. At least in London, they were. In Europe, I have more contact on this side of the pond, let's say. But even in US, there was a lot of tech communities going on and stuff. The pandemic kind of put a stop on them. Now they're gradually coming back. But like the reason I'm saying that is because like moving forward, I would like the continuation of what we started before the pandemic. We were accelerating the knowledge sharing across people. So we were the communities, they were local. We met in person. So that was good because we made a lot of friends, a lot of connections and stuff. But we were also start cross-pollinating as well. So we were traveling, sharing more. And so I would love us, from a community perspective, from a movement perspective, I would love to go back to that. And we are, for example, myself and through my company as well, we are sponsoring a lot of communities. So we want that to go back to what it was, like people meeting again, sharing knowledge, not only locally, but also online, like what we are doing today. So, but also, so I would like to see software development becoming more holistic, as I said. We start encompassing in software craftsmanship, we start incorporating the neighboring disciplines, like for example, user experience, business analysis, even like product ownership or product strategy. We need to build more business acumen because we are employed by business. Or the fruit of our work, the goal of it is not to produce well-crafted code. The goal is to power a business, right? Is to help a business to flourish and to evolve. And I think that's what I would like to see in our industry. So software developers broadening their skill sets and getting involved in more and more in the business side as well.
Well, and on that note, like how can we and businesses attract more people with these kind of like a software craftsmanship perspective?
First, they need to have like people want to work with people. People buy from people. They want to work with people. So first of all, you need to create. You need to be surrounded by a group of people, because I don't like to use the words company and stuff like, because you kind of make the thing very abstract, as if you didn't have power to change at all. But companies don't exist. What you have is a group of people that are working together, and they have different agreements and stuff. But that's so. There's always someone that can change something in a company. You cannot just say, the company is this. No, there is a person in a certain department that does certain things. First of all, it's like people within companies start creating better ways of working and start exposing that. Because people, like, for me to join a company, I need to know what they do. It's not just the outside product and marketing materials, but I would love to know who they are. Like, for example, we have all our faces on our website. People are on LinkedIn and stuff. So seeing who those are, create that community aspect. Integrate with the communities. So companies, for me, should invest more in technical communities or in communities in general, right? Any community related to whatever they do. So it's creating that private public connection, because it's good for the company, but it's good for the industry as well, right? So the more companies get together to do that, the better. And keep pushing the boundaries and making sure that when they hire people, they create a space that those people can shine. Of course, within the boundaries, right? So I call autonomy spheres, as I call it them. But they should be as wide as possible. Right.
Well, I love that. And one of the things that I think you talk about in the book that I'm really interested, I'd just love if you could do a little bit of around, like, how do you create a culture of learning in a company, or in a group of software engineers? I don't want to use I like the company word, but in a group, how do you create that?
So most of the times that I've seen that, these things cannot be dictated. All the places where I've seen that some manager somewhere said, look, we are going to have these from now on and everyone will learn. Never worked. No one is excited about it, right? So in order to really provide a culture of learning, it needs to be a bit more organic. It needs to be a bit more free. You cannot start putting dollar amount in that learning because you stifle that learning, right? So the learning, you need to create spaces where people kind of decide what they learn. Of course, it needs to have some boundary. You're gonna say, like, look, we have a company that is based in one thing and you want to spend a lot of time learning something that is completely unrelated. There needs to have some relationship, but it cannot be, like, for example, dictated. For example, some company says, from this time to this time, we are going to organize this space. Everyone is forced to go there for 2 hours, and you are going to learn this. It's never going to work, because then it became work.
Yeah.
So the learning cannot be directly associated to work. There are different types of cultures of learning as well. Or within a culture of learning, there are different things. There are things where we let people be. Like, for example, they start sharing. It doesn't matter what it is, because, like, once you get the passion of sharing and learning from each other, things evolve naturally, right? So then you create, so for example, everyone is welcome. And if you don't want to go, you don't need to go. So you make it optional because it's a learning thing. And some people have other commitments in their lives as well. But I like the kind of a mix also of a personal investment and a company investment. I like when you create those spaces to be a bit both, because it's also not the company's responsibility. I think that this is another thing that is important. A lot of people put a lot of weight on the company, that the company needs to do this, the company needs to do that. The company doesn't need to do anything. The company pays for a service and you provide the service. So you as an individual, that's the mindset of craftsmanship again. You as an individual decide, look, I want to be a good professional. I want to have a successful career. I want to always be employable. I want to have good employment, good gigs. For that, you need to make that investment yourself. And when the company provides that space, that is a bonus, but it's not their obligation. So the mindset starts from there already. And when you hire people like that, so that's another thing. That's why I said being organic. When you go to the communities and you hire people from, for example, you see who is taking their own personal time to do some learning. And it doesn't need to be going to a community. Sometimes they are watching a video at lunchtime or learning something at 7 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't matter. But, like, you start finding people that they have that in them of learning, and you start putting them together, and you just get out of their way. And
I even think, like, people are curious, asking questions. That's another way of learning. Someone who's constantly asking questions.
They will gradually create those environments, but you need to support them. So, and the more people like that you attract, the more people like them they want to bring in.
Right.
So they and then that friends and.
That creates that.
The recruitment process, they end up hiring people that have the same kind of ideas and stuff like that. And we create a lot of internal things where people can go and share and communities of practices and lunch and learn. So there are tons of things that the company can support, but you always need the individuals to drive. And in this, you cannot force, you cannot tell someone to do that. You need to find people that have that drive and get out of their way, basically.
Yeah, and I love the word you use too is sharing, rather than, which is like just people who want to share, just share with each other, and the power of sharing and how much learning can be transmitted in that conversation. I share this thing, and then maybe, oh, you have questions about it. Let's talk about it, which who knows what that can lead to.
Yeah. There are motivations as well. Some, for example, we try our best, and other companies do to some degree as well. When we identify people that sometimes they have an amazing knowledge, or they did something really cool, very different and stuff, we try to be proactive as well to identify those individuals and say, look, why don't you write a blog about that? Or let's have a discussion online and let's share that with the world. And that gets people excited, when they see their colleagues doing that. And that's what some of the things that you can do.
I love that. I just have 2 more quick questions.
Right.
Okay. Some people think that AI will kill software development. What's your perspective?
There's always an AI question nowadays.
I know there always is, right? And especially lately with everything that's been happening.
You need to have an AI. You know that my thesis, when I finished my degree in computer science, I was challenged by a colleague, by another student. We didn't like each other very much. We were very competitive, both of us, and he was very good. But we were very competitive. And he ended up having a slightly different career. So when we were in the last year, I said, look, I'm a developer by heart. I like writing code, and that's the career that I'm going to take. And he was more like going on the business, architecture, and whatever. And he made me a challenge. He said, like, developers are going to die. So, and then I said, okay, I'm going to write my thesis on that. So then, and this was back in 1997. So I went back in history and started looking, researching and stuff. So the first time that people said that I could find that someone wrote about that developers would die was back in the 60s when they created COBOL. But they were coming from binaries and assembly and low-level languages, and then someone created. Then when COBOL was written, they had English keywords in it. It's like, oh, now every person can do that now. Developers are going to die, and that cycle repeated for every next time that the building blocks, as I call them, became broader. For example, when C came along, or even the 4GLs, like a lot of languages in the 90s, early 2000s, you could just drag and drop things and create UIs. And then now definitely developers are going to die. So with the AI, it was just like a more aggressive bump. But like what I see, the way I see the world with the history that the story that I just mentioned, our building blocks become more coarse grained. We can do far more with quicker, right? So for example, we can now use certain tools that can write tests for us, or complete the code, or already get a piece of code somewhere else. We already had big frameworks in the past as well. We would get a framework that would do a lot of stuff for us. So we never died because of that. What we did was we could reuse a lot of things from frameworks, from other libraries and stuff. But then what we did, we had bigger building blocks, and we could think about more complex problems. So every time that the tools allow us to do more in a shorter period of time, what we naturally do as human beings, we look for more complex problems to solve. And that's what, for me, so the developers will still evolve. We might not be writing low-level code like we were not doing in assembly anymore, like we don't do in COBOL, like we don't do in C and stuff. But what we will be doing is we take help to build more complex things. But the logical thinking of this is a business problem, this is what we try to achieve, and we are going to use software somehow to assemble those building blocks with AI help or not. But our systems get more complicated, and that's what we'll keep doing. So developers will be there. It just change the building blocks they use. That's how I see it.
I love that. And we have 2 minutes left, and I don't know if you can answer this question in 2 minutes, but what do you see as next? Like, where do we go from here overall? Not just AI, but in general.
I don't know. So I think that we are still a bit far away. Not everywhere, but like the technology in quite a few areas are still a bit disconnected from business.
Mm.
So making sure that we are bringing everything together. I think that this thing about, for me, like every technical problem is a business problem. And everyone needs to understand that from both sides. From technical people understanding that every technical problem is a business problem, but business as well. They cannot say, oh, we have a technology problem. No, you have a business problem to solve. And then so make sure that our companies are more, that technology is integral. So we still have some work to do in that area, I think.
I think that's great. I love that, those bringing those two things together, because that's again where that power is. When we recognize that they're so interconnected. Thank you so much for joining us during this session. Sandro will be joining us over on the LeadDev Slack. I know I had a question or a comment that I couldn't get to. He'll be taking some questions. So head over to the Bookmarked channel where that'll be taking place. That's all from us this year. Our next session will be on January 9th, where we'll be speaking with Matt Abrams about his book, Think Faster, Talk Smarter. And on February 6th, we'll be speaking to Scott Moutz about his book, Leading from the Middle. Thanks again for being here today, Sandro.